Hi. Yeah, I will share my screen. Mm, one moment. Yeah. Um, do you see my presentation slide? Yeah, thank you. Yes. Yeah, thank you for your presentations, on MakeLab and Erica. I could relate to both of your projects, and I think especially with this presentation that I'm going to do now, I think there's a lot of overlap with Erica's research. So I have been for about 1.5 years exploring making electricity, harvesting electricity from wet soil, from mud, involving a lot of going to wetlands around where I live. I live in Eindhoven in the Netherlands, and there because Netherlands is in the whole country, almost the whole country is very wet. It used to be a swamp, and people have reclaimed land over time, and now, have more than half of the Netherlands is reclaimed land. And still, there is a lot of canals, as you probably know, and there are also a lot of rain all year. The summer is a bit dry, but most of the time there's a lot of rain, and also there we have a lot of wet soil, wet grasslands, and wet ponds and lakes and ditches. So for me, this was a perfect environment to go through this process because as soon as I knew that there are electrogenic bacteria, meaning bacteria that are living in mostly in wet soil under the water because they don't want to be in contact with oxygen. They are anaerobic. They can actually make electricity by their metabolism. I was quite intrigued to actually try this out myself, because I've always been interested in making my media art practice more close to nature and more collaborative to nature. And this was quite a perfect, interesting thing for me to dive into. I'll skip some slides. And there are actually two different ways you can harvest electricity using soil. And one of them is called earth battery. And if you stick two different metals, for example, copper and zinc, into the soil, mostly wet, it has to be wet, wet soil, there will be chemical reaction between these electrodes and the soil. And then this chemical reaction can make electricity just like any galvanic cell that we find. There are also a lot of batteries that we use in every day that use this similar kind of chemical reactions. And the other one is microbial fuel cell, which is it's the same material that I'll have to use for anode and cathode to stick them in to the mud, and then there are bacteria living in the soil that are making the electrons flow. And as the bacteria breaks down the soil, they produce electrons as waste material. And there are different kinds of bacteria that can do this, and they like to eat or metabolize different substrates in the soil, and they also are, depending on the species, the efficiency of making electricity is quite different as well. And these two are the most they are known to be well known to be electrogenic, and they are especially geobacter. They exist in almost every ecosystem that you find. So in any wetland or also just in dry soil, they will probably exist. And but still, I think they are they would like to be more in the wet soil, away from oxygen, and they produce these little wires that are very small, but they are also very conductive wires that they also use as electrical wires. They produce electrons and then they move these through these wires because they need to get rid of them in order to metabolize further to live. And this is sort of a scientific diagram of how this chemical reaction, well, more this metabolism works. And this green blob is the bacteria. And I don't know exactly this scientifically how to explain this, but they take in some substrate from the soil and then they sort of fart out electrons and some gas and some protons. It's very interesting process that's invisible, but it is surely happening. And once I organized a workshop with students in the design school here, and I chose a lot of different wetland spots in Eindhoven. This is one of the spots that I designated, and then there are more in the city for them to go to and take some samples. And I made this kind of tools to scoop mud from the water. And then we started making these mud cells with all these different mud coming from different ponds and places. And we used these kind of materials. It's good to use something non-corrosive. And you can also treat them a bit like real batteries. You can connect them up to increase current or voltage. So these are some of the jars that we had made from different locations. You can see where the soil came from. It was nice to see sort of different consistency of the mud and the colors and and also some like dead plants that were mixed into different mud as well, and some of them were growing plants after a while. And they were all producing electricity after a few days. It's sort of like a process of like almost like brewing kefir or kombucha. I usually think about it like that because you need some time for the electricity to start generating, because the bacteria needs to start living on the electrode that we put in there. Then they attach to it, they multiply, they colonize the electrode, and then they will start giving a lot of electrons to it, and that's when you can start to measure electricity. And because different ponds would give, or lakes or rivers would give different amounts of electricity, I could start making like this map of wetlands in Eindhoven with labels of like which wetland would give what voltage and how much current. And that was also for me like adding another layer to the wetland geography of the city. And so they are sort of brewing in my atelier. Still now they are there, and you can see the graph of how the electricity gets produced. In the beginning, it's almost nothing. And then these are the days passing. And then it quickly comes up to around 0.5 volts. And at some point, it gets to around 0.8. But then at some point, after about a few months, it starts to decrease, and some of them are still going strong, and some of them are not. And that's sort of because of depletion of things to eat for bacteria, I think, or either that or that I was not watering some of them very well, so that bacteria sort of died out. Yeah, and was also quite interesting that different soils were mixed in some jars. So I made mix of different mud from different sources in these some of these jars, and you can see here in the location names. And after a few months, when I measured it again, the mixed ones were doing better than the samples from one source, which I think it is because of course, the diversity in the sediment for the bacteria to metabolize, but also probably the diversity of species in there that they really some of them are probably more resilient, or like some of them just survive better in certain temperatures, and some of them might not. So it will probably increase their chances of staying electrogenic. This I mean, making these jars electrogenic. So these are some little MFCs, fuel cells that I've been making. And also I started planting some plants in there. And yeah, this one has been there for like 3 months outside. It's a small one, and it was still measuring 0.7 volts. It was nice to see that some of them do quite well. And also in some of the jars, I could see sort of this little ecosystem with worms, and there were mostly a lot of worms that were captured together with the soil. Yeah. Okay. And I tried different electrodes. So the electrode material that I put on the bottom of the mud and on top of the mud to harvest the electricity, they need to be conductive material that has a lot of surface amount to let bacteria attach to them as much as possible, and will be able to, the bacteria then will give the electrons they produce to this conductive material. Then we can use it as electricity. And these jars can also be charged with electricity, just like capacitors as well. And so I've been using different materials to see if some of them do better than others. Mostly I used stainless steel sponges or meshes and carbon. These on the left ones are carbon sponges or graphite sponges, they call it. And the one in the middle here on the top is activated carbon attached to a stainless steel mesh. And it seems like some of them are doing much better than others, like the carbon felt and the stainless steel sponges are doing much better. And since I actually really wanted to take these experiments outside, because I wanted to see how these kind of cells would function in ecosystems. So where there is a circulation of food for bacteria, so that it will become not just a depleted cell after a while, but will still continue producing electricity as sort of a byproduct of being an ecosystem. So I was imagining some kind of a garden, and I finally found a place where they offered me to actually build a garden that makes electricity, and it was a place called Hof van Cartesius in Utrecht, in the Netherlands. And it's a community of people who have quite a really nice garden and some buildings there. I don't have a photo here, but they offered me this plot of land that was empty to build this garden, and I collected a lot of pipes that were discarded from building these. They built all these buildings themselves I mean, not all of it, but they sort of like built some structures of the like the rain pipes and pipings and the facades and some of in between structures they had built themselves, and they had a lot of leftover materials that they were maybe going to trash. So I collected some of these, and I started to make make a garden. And they also had a lot of buckets that I could use for bigger cells as well. And I just sort of was quite simple, like make something similar like what I had with the jars indoors. I just like make them and then stick them into the ground with the electrodes. And I wanted to mix a lot of different soil. It was a bit difficult because there was so much to fill. So I used a lot of garden soil, but I think yeah, the garden soil was not producing as much electricity as I wanted it to. But at the moment, I'm experimenting with adding some more pond soil into some of the cells to see if that also makes changes afterwards. And I planted some swamp plants in the soil, and wishing that like this whole garden will mature and the plants will start to generate some food. I mean, like the droppings, like the dead plant leaves or animals that are living there, the dead bodies of animals will decompose by in the soil, and the bacteria living inside will then probably have food to eat, and then therefore will continue giving electricity. That's sort of the idea. And I started collecting the electricity from the garden for a small exhibition called Composting Computers at this place. And it was actually working. I made a small prototype that would, that I connected up most of the cells of the garden in series, and I could make around 6 volts or 5 point something volts. And then I have collected this electricity in capacitors, and then I coded a simple processing sketch on a Raspberry Pi, and this Raspberry Pi was receiving radio signals from an Arduino that was powered by the garden. So I don't know if this video will work, but maybe. Oh yeah. You can see that the voltage was charged by 5.4 volts in the capacitor. Then if I press this switch, it will activate an Arduino to send a signal to the computer. So now you see a little dot growing into a virtual garden in the screen. So this was sort of a proof of concept I made for June presentation in the exhibition. Yeah, it was nice to sort of see it working. And I also once did an exhibition last year connecting up a lot of these jars that I made in the workshop, and then powering a radio transmitter. And this one that with the coiled antenna, it is a DIY radio transmitter that's connected to a phone for the audio, but it's powered by the transmission of the audio is powered by the mud. And on the right, you see a radio receiver that is tuned into the transmitter, and it's very close together, but it was really transmitting an audio that I made. It was a little audio clip, audio book kind of story I made that was transmitting. And recently I connected up a buzzer circuit that could make some random sounds to I hope you hear the sounds. Yeah, so 5 cells were powering this little circuit with the buzzer, and I really liked that it was able to continuously do something. And when I'm thinking about intelligence and the garden, uh, I I think of these three, branching out themes. One is intelligence of wetlands, and one is intelligent materials, and the other one would be about electronics, or electrical intelligence that can be powered by the garden. So I think a lot about wetlands when I do this project, and I love the biodiversity that I can see in wetlands, in the what kind of plants and insects and animals are living in there, and also the complexity of this ecosystem, and also the fact that wetlands are able to actually handle a lot of pollution and do bioremediation of like wastewater, to filter wastewater, and also the plants and animals living in it, also the bacteria living in it can dilute the pollution, like the polluting substances into less polluting. They can actually convert chemically these substances to more bioavailable molecules, or less polluting forms. So these things are for me very interesting, and also the self-organization of natural ecosystems. Yeah, and then one of the this is also more scientific project that I thought it was interesting to look into, because it is sort of a technology that is about actually using nature's systems to achieve wastewater treatment. And these two people on the left, they are scientists who pioneered this technology, and they have made this guy, John Todd. He made something called the Echo Machine, that he took different kinds of ecosystems from different kinds of wetlands into each bucket, and then he chained them into one linear, very long machine, and he would put in really, really heavily polluted wastewater into it. And it was artificially made so that he wanted to test something very, very heavily polluted. So he put a lot of things in there. Heavy metals were also in it, and all kinds of chemical things, and also organic waste in it. And then he achieved sort of ecosystem chains, different ecosystems working together to actually treat this water into even drinkable water at some point at the end. And still the ecosystems in the boxes could function without being destroyed by the toxins, because the plants and the animals there had the ability to either deal with it, or avoid it, or actually like use it for something either useful or convert it to something less harmful. And I find it interesting how people construct wetlands. That it's such a really complex ecosystem that needs a lot of work by nature, but there's also a lot of work that people can do to actually like give way to for this kind of ecosystem to thrive and collaborate with human needs. And yeah, I sort of inserted this in because I'm quite interested in different kinds of wetlands. And once I was doing an artist residency in the north of Netherlands, where there is a very huge surface of like these intertidal mud flats at the shore. And there I was making robots that walk on the mud flats. And I was always thinking here about the the place, the wetlands as a place of evolution and the place of birth and death of organisms, and also a place of decay. As the robots were walking and they were evolving, as I made them more sort of compatible to walk on the mud flats on these sticky places. And at some point, some robots, sort of did some suicide into like really sticky, watery mud, and then they would drown, and they would become something else, like some kind of a beautiful sculpture. So yeah, in this process, I was thinking a lot about also stories that people told in this landscape, like what kind of wetland mythology people were interested in. Yeah, so these are also sort of in the background of my projects. And I think a lot about materials that I use to build these mud cells. And I was thinking, I think like compostable materials and like this, like what Erica was talking about, these dissolvable materials are truly intelligent materials. Yeah, and I was thinking a lot about also because of this exhibition that I participated in with my garden called Composting Computers, and I was thinking, what is a compostable computer? And when you make these mud cells, I usually use these basic elements. One is a container to contain the watery soil, and also capture rain water into it so that it has sort of needs to be waterproof. And I use one cathode, one anode. They're both mostly carbon felt with electrical wires. And I was thinking a lot about like what kind of other containers that I could use that were maybe more like they would hold water, but still be not such a permanent kind of material like plastic. And I looked into some. I just made some like small research online about like what were the first batteries, and what did like people in the older times use, what kind of materials did they use to make batteries. And this is called Baghdad battery. It's a ceramic pot, a tube of copper, and a rod of iron. And it's yeah, they think it's probably not a battery. Some people think it's not a battery. Some scientists really deny that it's a battery, but it can actually work as a battery. If you put water or soil in it, it can work as a galvanic cell. And there is also this very ancient source of writing. There is this Indian sage who's called Agastya, and this book that he wrote, Agastya Samhita, has this paragraph talking about a galvanic cell, a battery. And it also talks about an earthenware and copper and zinc. And then I looked into the website of your farm, the Willow Farm, and I really liked that you are making baskets with the willows. that you cultivate, and very interested in what kind of ecosystems are related to your farming, and also techniques for basket weaving. And I was thinking, like, how do you actually waterproof these kind of materials? And there are actually existing like resins that people used to waterproof water jugs, and there are some actual findings of like these old remains of like waterproof jugs that people used to make. I thought that was very beautiful, and I just imagined my battery serving its purpose for a while, and then being able to decompose into the ground instead of remain there for as a e-waste, or yeah, as some kind of plastic waste. And then of course there's this electrode that I think could maybe be replaced with an alternative material. And I was thinking it's quite difficult to think about a conductive solid material that has a lot of surface amount. There, I don't have so many options, I think. Also, it should preferably not be corrosive, as also should not pollute the water when it's and the soil. And I was thinking, yeah, because I heard that stainless steel and steel are very there's abundance of like these waste materials that are found in scrap yards, and they are also very easy to be recycled, I heard. So I thought about this as well as sort of an alternative. And yeah, and the last part that I think a lot about is, of course, how do I use this electricity that's coming from the soil, because it's such a small amount of electricity, and it is such yeah, it's not stable. It's sort of opposite of what people would call a working like working power plant or anything. So, but then I find a lot of beauty in it, because you need to wait until you have enough electricity harvested until you can do something with it. And then also I think a lot about then what kind of, like, it's such a precious electricity. Like, think about how small the bacteria are, and how much work they need to do for you to have a little bit of electricity to maybe power a small computer like an Arduino with for like 10 seconds. It's such a precious electricity that I'm dealing with. So I find it very beautiful to work with, actually. And so it has to be a lot about efficiency as well, and thinking a lot about like not only digital electronics but also analog electronics, and like the rhythms of nature, because bacteria needs to function. Like the bacteria they are quite sensitive to temperature, so this electricity can be more of a seasonal thing. So it can be that some seasons, some bacteria are doing better than others, and so some of the cells will perform better in one season than another. And also, I'm very much interested in the hybridity of nature's intelligence and digital intelligence. How do they collaborate? And also, especially about the mixing of unpredictability and order, and embracing errors instead of rejecting them. And I thought this experiment by a cybernetic researcher, Stafford Beer, he made he thought of an experiment. It's a pond actually existing ecologically, like a pond that has its own ecosystem functioning. And he thought about connecting an actual factory, like maybe a factory that manufactures something or does something, and he wanted the pond to to control the factory. And because he was interested in the self-organization of a pond's ecosystem. So even if like a pond, the circumstances of the pond could suddenly change, maybe a climatic change or maybe something pollutes the pond or whatever, the pond will find a way to deal with it and find a new balance by adaptation, because there are so many complex interactions that are happening between different species, that the pond finds ways to adapt to new situations. And he wanted that to govern a factory. And I thought these kind of experiments were interesting, even though he never really succeeded because he couldn't really interface the pond with a factory. But yeah, I thought it was interesting to think about. And I'm really into these beam robots. And they are called beam robots from these four words that it's sort of like grounded in the philosophy of biologically inspired small robots that use mostly solar energy. And its philosophy is also a lot about reusing waste components and using the lowest number of possible electronics to make insect-like robots. And they are very, very small but efficient circuits. And actually they work quite well with the mud cells. So I just switch out the solar cell with the power supply from the mud cells that I made, and then these circuits will probably work. And the one with the buzzer that was making sound, that was one of these circuits that I tried out. So these are some of the circuits that you could make. And I like to think about soil as media, that it's sort of that the soil that I'm dealing with is sort of an information system, like a bit like also how Erica approaches water. That soil also can contain information, can be sort of medium for data and communication. And so for me, this also gives sort of perspective towards the garden becoming more like a medium for as an information system. And you can see the garden sort of is changing over time. Some cells are doing better than others, and the plants are growing, and it's collecting rainwater quite well. So yeah, I am still going on with this research, and you can see here there are also some little insects living in the buckets, and there are also a lot of mosquito larvae living in there as well. And there are worms and little flies and all kinds of stuff happening. Oh yeah, and I'm curious to go to this farm and go to your farm and see the closest ponds or lakes. And I saw on the map there is a small little pond that's maybe in the walking distance at the northern side. I don't know if it's a pond or
It's completely accessible. There's a little trail that goes to it.
So
yeah.
it's created by beavers,
Mm-hmm.
and the beavers move downstream gradually. So there's quite a few different landscapes created by the beavers, and then we also have some like swampy areas in the woods and a little pond near. There's lots of really interesting wetlands in the area at the base of the hills here. This is very interesting. Really, really interesting.
So I'm curious
I wish we had our soils are very iron rich. I don't know
Hmm.
if interesting information. The beaver pond recently had the farm next door sold, and they tilled up all of the drainage system in the field, and it caused a lot of the soil from that field to wash into the pond. And so there's
Hmm.
a new layer of soil in there that was grazed by cattle for many years. And so it's not like it's not a natural pond anymore. You know, it's really it's
Yeah,
got a lot of interactions with the beavers and humans and everything.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're exploring ways of remediating with planting around that pond.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I'm so curious to know a bit about this whole system that's going on with these wetlands there and the soil and the history of the substrates and yeah, also how you farm your willows and yeah, things like that. Yeah. Yeah, and I um what some things that I find it sometimes a bit difficult about my research as an artist is how to make an artwork that can stand in an exhibition space that will if I use actually these mud cells to produce energy for maybe a small media art work to function, which I'm trying to do with the garden. I find it hard to really place that in an exhibition space or like travel with it in airplanes or anything,
Right.
because they are living ecosystem, and I don't I feel like I'm making art project that is so unhuman centered if I come to these kind of challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then also I am many times I'm doing a lot of more like pseudoscience in a way, but I because I'm not a scientific researcher, but a lot of my research process in this
Mm,
particular project involves a lot of science knowledge and
mm.
sort of scientific tracking of data of actual working things. And so I am always thinking how I want to translate this into an artwork. I have a lot of ideas, but it's also a lot about making choices about, yeah, in different aspects, I think. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my story. Yeah. Thank you.
So I just this is like just a um, what your work made me think about is something that I have wanted to experiment on the land with for a while. We had an artist here who actually is going to be back in the area while you're here, but this spring we were using contact microphones
Hmm.
to listen to the plants in the forest,
Yeah.
and it was one of the most like viscerally educating experiences I've had, if that makes sense. Like it was like I felt like I was a baby learning about the world again, and that like just touching a plant gave
Hmm.
me so much information because I was hearing all things at a microscopic level, if you can use that for
Mm.
sound.
Yeah.
And I dreamed about embedding tiny microphones in the plants so that people could experience that without wearing headphones. So they can go around and like touch a plant and hear like the sound at a more like a smaller level. Um, and I noticed you're using, but I imagine this, and I'm like, I don't want to have a bunch of wires running around in the woods.
Yeah.
But I noticed you're small microphones with with this, and you said you had a story on
Oh, yeah,
one, but I'm
yeah. Yeah, the
curious
transmitter.
how much
Yeah.
you need to have like tiny to power tiny speakers. It
Mm.
could be actually the sound from the actual environment
Mm.
that's creating.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an idea. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but the with if you're needing to like your dilemma is creating something that can be transported to various galleries.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. But I don't know. Do I really want to do it or not? That's also a bit of a question as well. Yeah.
If you
Well, I think that's sort of one of the things too,
Yeah.
is about being able to work with the materials in the place that you're at, as opposed to sort of bringing
Yes.
materials. But that whole changes the complete different way of how an exhibition works and what a gallery does and where a gallery exists
Yeah.
too. So it's quite a challenge.
I feel like this has been one of the biggest dilemmas. When I moved here, I was working in virtual reality, and I was thinking about like, how do I expand so that other people can experience what's here. And I developed a creative software that multiple people could be together virtually to work on creative projects. And we still had to bring our remote team together for meetings, because you can't replace being in an actual place with somebody. But just to say that even without bringing the materials out, I think that sound, because it can be so tactile, is combining sound and visual things is, to me, has been one of the most impactful ways of bringing the experience out of here. Without having to bring things from here or bring people here, that data can give people the most similar experience to being here. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really like the presentation. I like the way you're using materials. I like the questions you're asking. And then also it's that idea, like you said, about exhibition with live things. And I was thinking about, and I cannot remember who it was, but I think it was the 80s or 90s. In the States, there were a fair number of projects where people would put ecosystems in the gallery and then have a window, and then the work within the whatever was sort of like a pond or whatever outside the gallery. And there was an artist that was doing wastewater remediation from the gallery into a space. Like in the gallery, the water would go into this pond.
Yeah.
And then the water would go outside, and so there is sort of a precedent of sort of mixing the galleries and landscapes, and depending on sort of where these galleries are.
Yeah.
But most of the time they're not, but hey, I think it's exciting and a fun way to think about how to make an exhibit and artwork.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And also like sort of maybe inviting the host institution or galleries to think with you in this challenge. Yeah.
Would it be helpful for you if I were to explore making connection with some of the ceramics artists here, if ceramics is also something that you're exploring as vessels?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I would be curious for that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna develop the weaving workshops with Marie. So we are gonna as a orientation part. We thought that with Risa, but I think the kind of activities holding from the farm and the resident of there is very helpful for us. And actually there are a lot of things to discuss, right? The presentation was very impressive for me. And actually I've learned about you said you recently read about found some articles and references a lot through this research, right? So so it was very interesting to know that to the most impressive part was for me me was that mixed soil is more produce the more
More energy, more
energy.
electricity.
Yeah, so
and longer.
right. So it was so impressive, and it is vividly show the result of the how we collaborate and how the various diversities species should be collaborate. Yeah, so yeah, there are a lot of things to discuss. So that you guys, Erica and Sunjoo, you guys want to go to the Gatineau River or someday during the residency? Because as I know, the Franco is also heading to, she wants to go to the Gatineau River. And if there any place to go together or as a groups, then we can arrange some transportations and some time to visit there. So
Yeah, maybe it's nice to visit it once in one of the days together. And yeah, I think so. But I think I'm more interested in this beaver hunt.
right, yeah.
But I can go there anytime. It looks like it's so close by.
Right. Yeah.
I have a paper on how to do a cell that's similar, Sunjoo, to the mud one with the bacteria, but it's an algae based cell, power cell. So I have that paper, so I can share that paper with everyone.
Yeah.
And Suyeon and Bina, I have a collection of pictures. Every time I go to small towns or there's museums, and everybody has taxidermy animals, but they're really old and they're kind of disintegrating. And so I have all these pictures so I will share with my pictures, and you can use them in any way you want to use them.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stuffed animals.
Thank you.
And I currently went to the New York City's National History Museum that you mentioned to me. So yeah, I took several pictures of the animals and then the displaying
That's great.
animals.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Then I'm gonna share it with them. Yeah. I want to continue this meeting to discuss about the subject that you researched, but I think it is time to end up the meeting today. Yeah. Do you have any more questions to add or comments? No, right?
I may follow up an email. I've got a lot of notes because there was so much.
Right. So
I would be.
Yeah.
What's up?
I don't. Have we talked about doing like just a little bit of a presentation? We could at another time, just a bit of a walkthrough of the farm, like more visual and kind of show what's where, and maybe probably after we've had a chance to kind of digest and think about what would be interesting to everyone.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And it is very grateful to know about your researches, and I'm gonna share the records of this video, and then I guess the other members will continue the questions about the works. So let's continue the researches. Yeah. Thank you for your time and your cooperations, and see you again in August. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Okay.
everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, guys. Yeah.
Bye.